Hello everybody, it's Richard here. I'm a storyteller. I've been telling stories in libraries for many years, and I'm delighted to say that I'm still going to keep on telling stories because even though the libraries are closed, the library service goes on. And I'm going to come here every day, if I can, and tell a story. I think stories have a role to play. These are difficult times, and a story can just be a holiday for your imagination. So forget about everything and just enter into a story. And I'm just going to start. So imagine far away from here, a long time ago, there was a great walled city. Imagine the red tiles on the roofs and the little winding cobbled streets of that city. It's a beautiful morning. The sun is shining, and outside the city walls the landscape rolls green, verdant, all the way to the horizon. And a group of people are sitting in a circle in the grass outside the walls, and each of them holds a book. Yes, they meet every day to read books together. Imagine the pleasure they take in sharing what they've read, talking to each other. Imagine the hubbub of that conversation. But suddenly, one person in that conversation holds up his finger. And he says, "My friends, how long have we been meeting here? I can hardly remember when we started. And yet we always do the same thing. I have a suggestion to make. Why don't we stand up and go travelling?" What? The others are somewhat surprised by this, but we come here to read. Well, said the man, I don't really know why I say this, but when I see the beauty of the morning and when I see the rolling hills and I see the horizon, suddenly the thought comes into my mind. What's on the other side? Now, there was somebody in that group, a little bit older, maybe wiser, who smiled secretly and then said, "Well, if you do that, you should be aware of what happened to the princess when she walked into the desert." "What? Which princess? Which desert?" "It's a story," he said. "It's a story. Let me tell it to you." And so he began. Outside city walls on that beautiful spring morning, he began to tell the story of the princess and the desert. He said, "A long time ago, there was a princess, and she loved to read. She lived for knowledge. She read all day long. She ate, she slept. That was her life. And in the castle where she lived, there was a great library. From ceiling to floor, it was filled with books. And she had read in that library all her life, book after book after book, learning and reading and imagining and studying. One day she realized she'd read them all. So she went running through the castle. She went running to find her father. She said, Daddy, I've read all the books." Her father looked at her and he said, "Ah, I was waiting for this moment." She said, "But I need something more. I need to know something more. I haven't finished. He said, yes, I was expecting you to say this. She said, well, what's your answer? What can I do? He said, let me tell you a story. At the edge of my kingdom, there is a desert. In the middle of that desert, there's a great rock. In the middle of that rock, there's a library. What? You never told me this before. Well, you never asked. The princess said, I must go to that library. And she jumped up. No, wait, said her father. Wait, because you need one more thing. When you get to the rock, you need to know the magic spell. And bending close to his daughter's ear, he whispered and he whispered. And she listened and she remembered. And then she ran. She ran on and on. She ran out of the town. She ran through the kingdom. She ran to the very edge until she got to the desert. And then she stood there looking out, a great, great expanse of sand. She could taste it as the wind blew and whipped up, sending it. And she started to walk. She put her feet into the sand, and then she kicked off her shoes, and she walked barefoot through the sand. Her feet sunk up to her ankles. And soon she was wading through sand, scrambling up the dunes, slipping down on the other side, falling and rising again and keeping going, wading on and on under that great blue sky and the sun so hot, and still she kept on going. She kept on going. And then in the distance, she saw it. It was a black rock. She ran towards it, tripping and falling and running again. And when she reached it, she looked at it. It was vast. It was smooth. She walked all the way round it. There was no cave, there was no entrance, there was nothing. And then she remembered what her father had whispered to her, the magic spell. She began to whisper it herself. Then she began to shout it. She shouted it into the wind as the wind blew. As it howled around that rock, she shouted it, she screamed it. And the rock seemed to know, seemed to hear, because something started to move. A door slid open. And there was a cave inside. She stood there, gazing into it, because it was filled with millions of candles, and each one was burning. And by the light of those candles, she saw that the cave was filled with books. And now she ran inside, and she picked up the first book, leather-bound, with ancient inscriptions. And she opened it. She began to read it. Whatever the language was, she knew those languages from her study over years and years. And she began to read sentence after sentence. And those sentences were like honey. She read on and on. She read on, and then to the next book, and to the next book. And she didn't realise that as she read, the candles were burning down, lower and lower. And she didn't realise until the door of the cave slid shut. And one by one, those candles guttered and went out. Psst. She was in darkness. She was alone. And so, said the man who was telling this story outside the city walls on that spring morning long ago, and so That's why we must be very careful if we go travelling in search of knowledge. But hang on a moment, the others said. What happened to her? She's stuck in a cave, in darkness. How does she get out? But the man who was telling this story stood up. He tucked his book under his arm. And he said, well, you're going to have to think about this. But I'll meet you here tomorrow, same time, same place. And then I'll tell you the end of the story. And so, to echo those words, if you meet me here tomorrow, same time, same place, I'll tell you what happened to the princess in the cave, and I'll tell you what happened to the walled city, and I'll tell you what happened to those 10 people who read together. But until then, thank you and goodbye.